Bond Ward, and tonight we're going to talk about the DSM-V and substance use disorders. Kind of take a look at the continuum of mild, moderate, and severe, and just kind of talk through how we might come to an individual's diagnosis, take a look at how we come to the severity, and maybe to take a look at what remission is, how we get to a remission diagnosis, and what might be the course of treatment for an individual that we might be serving. So you guys can just kind of chime in. We can take a look at the criteria first. In front of you, what you have is right from the DSM-V, and it's the substance use disorder assessment, and kind of gives you some criteria for the symptomology that you might see, as well as gives you some qualifiers for how you choose mild, moderate, or severe diagnosis for an individual. And it's also got some information. We'll go into a little bit more detail about remission and early remission, and if a diagnosis can just kind of go away, or if somebody has a substance use diagnosis, are they always, do they always have a substance use diagnosis? So first, if we can kind of share, what is your understanding of substance use disorders as it relates to what criteria you might use to determine if somebody has a diagnosis that you should qualify them with?
Well, I go basically through DSM-V criteria, and I go through all of them, and basically making sure that this is not only an isolated pattern of behaviors or a situation, has to be a continuous, or sometimes the DSM-V describes it as persistent or consistent, which at times is not that clear, but you only have to make sure that this is actually a pattern of behaviors that is impacting the person, has been continuously, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So you're actually doing your comprehensive clinical assessment, you're kind of digging through their biological and looking at their history and their substance use and trying to determine how much, how often, what does that look like for them? Is it impacting any of their life domains? And so that's how you're going to determine whether it's a persistent
And then,
problem.
sometimes they will report one thing, but as you're digging more and they realize that, well, they don't see that it's an issue or impact in their life, but as a clinician we do, and we're able to put that under one of the criterias right there.
Yeah, so you're going to see, typically clients are going to underreport.
Yes.
So you're going to ask some additional questions and find that, they may be using another substance that they didn't figure it was an issue. But then you find that they're really using that on a regular basis, and so it's impacting their ability to kind of do their daily life activities on a regular basis, or impacting some, life domain in some way.
One of the things that had came up very early when Elva started with us is under the physical and psychological portion of it. Like, people wouldn't report that they think it's a problem. However, if they have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder and they're taking prescription medications, or a physical, a medical diagnosis and they're taking prescription for that, they don't see that using another substance like alcohol or whatever it is would fit into this list here.
Right. So it's trying to decipher between using prescription medications as prescribed, but then also having some other substance that you use in excess on a continuous basis that impacts your ability to do the things that you should be doing.
Well, they should know.
Go ahead.
But they should know because it's on the pill box. I mean, on the pill box. It's on the prescription. It says do not use alcohol.
So this is why some of them don't use the medication, they use the substance.
And use alcohol with it, and they think, oh, it's okay.
Right.
Exactly.
But what if they're not doing it in excess? Like, let's say outside of the prescription meds, they may be in the mild diagnosis or the borderline mild or no diagnosis without the physical medical portion of from the list here. What if they are drinking 1 to 3 times a week? Regular amounts of drinks, 1 to 2 beers, 1 to 2 glasses of wine, things like that. How do you still count the psychological and the physical portion of it?
Well, again, I think we have this discussion in the field all the time about, so if somebody's on a prescription medication and it says don't use with alcohol, and so say they take their medication, right, and they're not taking it with alcohol, but then, right, they have a regular drink the next day or, hours after their medication.
Right.
Is that a substance use issue? That's actually a really good question.
Right.
For me, it would be, as long as they're taking the medication as prescribed and not taking it with alcohol.
Well, not right, but they are.
And so say, for example, they had to take this medication for 3 weeks, so they really cannot drink for 3 weeks while they're taking this medication.
Right.
But then they have a regular drink 3 times a week. It's the standard drink. Is it an issue?
Or a glass of wine.
Or a glass of wine.
I took
Is it
my
an
back medication. I'd say I just had a glass of wine.
Well,
I got high blood pressure.
well, that is true.
Right.
Well, I think
I'm interested.
when you're doing the assessment, it should count.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're taking their medication regularly as prescribed,
They shouldn't be drinking at all.
they shouldn't be drinking. No mixing of medication.
Now, just it depends on the type of medication, because like, what about regular high blood pressure medication? Different things like that.
It may not say you can't, it may say it may make you drowsy or don't use, but it doesn't necessarily say on the bottle that you can't drink.
What were you saying, Emma?
What I'm saying is, there are certain situations medically that we are aware of, and hopefully the doctor tells the client there are heart conditions. Sometimes clients do not use medication, and they have conditions that if you use substances that can actually increase or exacerbate or create a condition. So to me, concerns of taking the medication and also taking substantial. So let's say I'm taking medication and one day I report I take 1 drink. I will not see that as an issue, but that's not what we see. The other part is if I decide not to take the medication because when I am curious, that's my word.
Yes.
If I'm curious. So no, I do not take the medication. Actually, I do not take the medication when I'm going out. So that tells me that you're going to put the substance before your
That is
health.
a good one. I've actually heard
okay.
that. I've actually heard that where the person does not take their meds
Because they know
they're
there's an
gonna
interaction
drink.
between the medication and their drink.
Yeah.
And so therefore they're not going to take their meds.
It is a smart move. Just the same thing as
It's a smart move.
It is a
Well,
smart move.
medically.
Heart reduction. Same thing
Yeah.
when somebody tells you, I pulled off on the road because I was feeling drowsy. Yes, you already drove. However, safer than continuing. So for some people, they find that to be a great option.
Right.
Clinically, it's not.
It's not because you're putting your drink above your health.
And I
You're
do
putting your
understand
health
that
at risk.
Yeah.
However, there's still this argument between, so you're putting your health at risk, but you're not mixing the substances. And so is it really an issue of, can you count that as abusing?
Is it-
But how
well,
long do you
then-
stop taking the substance? It takes, depends on what
It's
type
still
of-
in the system.
It's still in your system.
Right.
Even though I decide I'm not gonna take my oxygen.
Your meds?
My meds is still in the system.
It's still in the system, but
So I'm not gonna take it.
so if a person's
No, I'm not
going
taking
out
it.
every weekend and they say they don't take it every weekend to drink,
That's a different issue,
Yeah.
as opposed to I go out once a month with my friends, and so I know that there's this interaction between my medication and a drink, and I have 1 drink when I'm out.
But it's still in
And
your
so-
system.
It's still in your system, but I think the effects are exacerbated if you take that
Yeah.
dosage and then drink.
Or
So
then-
their thought is like you were saying, I'm lessening the risk
yeah.
by not taking that dose.
And another thing is that there are conditions and medications there are conditions, health conditions that will not show up all the time. And there are also medications that are not taken all the time. That's medication wise. I'll check on that because something that I do is as I started doing the assessment, I'm gathering all of that information. So it's the whole picture. It's not a one little thing, it's the whole picture. So there are 6 times where individuals will say, I have to take this medication for X amount of time, I abstain. I have taken that medication and it's clearly indicated that I cannot have drinks. And I continue my drinking pattern even if it's, quote, social and safe. That's a concern to me.
Right.
Okay, so,
Right.
and the other part is there are health conditions that alcohol itself, they don't have to take medication, but there are health conditions that alcohol will exacerbate.
Right.
I am the one asking the client, what has happened with the substance, or mentally speaking. Some people have severe, moderate, whatever the person might be, anxiety. They're not on medication. They might not be on medication or treatment, not because they don't need it, because they cannot go, they're not feeling, still good for that. They're using other substances to overcome. Whatever the case is, I'm going to assess the medical, medication-wise, and the health condition itself. So if either or, I have the clear understanding that alcohol will impact or could highly impact, I will take that into consideration.
So would you then, say for example, if somebody had that scenario and they were using alcohol, which exacerbates their medical condition, then you would diagnose them with a substance use
So
disorder?
let's say acid, some people have severe issues with the stomach, acid reflux, and they're the ones telling me, when I drink, the doctor have told me, I say, has anyone, because that's one of the things they say, has anyone told you, and the client has said, clients have said, yeah, alcohol will do this to me. Sometimes it's an external condition, and 100% alcohol will exacerbate, but yet it's not one drink, it's not in a safe environment, it's a situation of, and also, not only you get into problems because you develop alcoholism or addiction, there are behaviors where if I have 2 drinks and I go driving right there and then, I ask clients, within how long do you have this amount of drinks? Within an hour. And within how long from the last drink to driving? What, 30 minutes. So now I understand how come, quote, if it's a little bit amount, still does severe impact. Underuse. Some people may still get 3-4 DWIs and they still have not clinically met a criteria for any severe alcoholism, and they may never meet it.
Right. But typically they're underreporting because the individual who has more than one DWI actually has probably driven thousands of times before they even got caught. So their use is probably a whole lot more than they're actually reporting to you.
But also the diagnosis would not be based on medicals. It will be about behaviors.
Yes.
DSM-V describes medical and behavior-wise.
And use, So if you're calculating their use over a period of time, right, they may even move to moderate and not mild because you're looking at their pattern of use. So yeah, absolutely.
What about over-the-counter medication? They never report over-the-counter medication with alcohol, like NyQuil and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, you can ask if they're taking any over-the-counter medications on a regular basis, but most people are not going to report over-the-counter medication.
Like if they have a cold or something?
Yeah, because you shouldn't have alcohol and take over-the-counter medication, like Sudafed and all that.
Well, we asked if they're currently taking any medication, whether it is prescription or otherwise. So, but then you also have to look at, case in point, if it's a DWI, were you taking medication at the time? Any and all medication. So that's when you would qualify that. And then if the person has been sick recently, I think they would report that in their medical history. So you consider that too.
Right, because that's going to be you driving under the influence. So, it could be any medication. They should be reporting. They may not, but.
And that's the thing, right? When we get a DWI, and not to forget about it, when there actually is prescribed medications and I'm doing exactly what I'm doing, there's no other substance, yet the medication indicates that I should not be doing that in the other. So you do get a DWI, you're taking medication as prescribed. And some people need to stay on that medication for medical reasons. Where do you draw the line? Because dependence is there, not because of use. And there are 2 more parts that will meet criteria, and yet does not meet criteria because it's part of the taking the medication.
Let's piggyback on that actually. So we have been getting people who got a DWI because they're on Oxycontin, they're on Xanax, they're on whatever it is, and they're taking it as prescribed. However, it is a substance that is illegal to drive a car with. So when we're looking at the DSM, do they meet the criteria for mild, moderate, or severe?
Well, and those are individuals who they probably will meet the criteria, but we should also then be trying to get a consent to speak with their doctors because they probably need to be weaned off of some medications. Because what conditions do they need it for? So hopefully those individuals are going to some sort of pain management clinic, and especially if they have to drive to get to work or whatever the case may be. they want to get to a point where they can start to be weaned off of those
Because we get a lot of
medications.
people with medical concerns, back issues, real osteoporosis, arthritis, things like that.
Significant medical issues.
Yes, and so they're on all these pain meds, but they still have to drive to go wherever they have to go.
Right.
So, I mean, when we look at it outside of prescription, they do meet it, but when they're actually taking it as prescribed, because we'll get the prescription list and it says they're supposed to take this amount
per
all
day.
day. Exactly.
Yeah, or PRN as needed every 8 hours. But again, if it says not to operate a vehicle and they're doing that, you know, it will meet the criteria, but then, right, do you diagnose them? Because really, they're not abusing or misusing. But on the other side, as clinicians, we should still be talking about, we need to speak with your doctor to see if there's something that you can, you know, be weaned off of this and get on something else, which people really struggle with.
Right.
Especially when they're opiates.
Yes.
But also, and I'll bring some cases, when I used to work in New York, we have situations where apparently the medication list looks beautiful. When you call the doctor will share with you concerns that they have regarding the client's usage of the medication. And because, quote, nothing bad has happened, the doctor continued to prescribe cautiously. So I remember back then, over there, you know, because it's like more like in-depth substance abuse treatment, you will call the doctor to confirm. Every time there was a charge related to prescribed medication and the client is denying, because if the client is admitting already abuse and misuse and whatever, that's another story. But if the client is on medication and that medication is the cause of the problem, you will coordinate with the medical doctor just to explore. You don't have to give a lot of details. In this case, you want to explore from the doctor any concern. And I remember one case specifically, there was concern, but the doctor never knew about what was happening with this substance.
Okay.
Outside of the
so they had like red flags, but
Nothing that
yeah,
they
it
can
was maybe in the
pinpoint.
virtuous, maybe like with us.
So I was just talking to Keisha about this in supervision, where I had a lady who we suspect that she was abusing Adderall, and she'd been taking Adderall for 20 plus years. So we wanted her to go to Anubia to have another assessment so that they can give her, she was at the shelter and they was going to give her another assessment so she can get prescribed a medication that's not a narcotic but still can treat the same disorders that she had, but she won't do that. She don't want to do it because, of course, she wants her Adderall. And so when I called the doctor and I expressed my concerns of her behaviors, when, you know, we feel like she was abusing it, and they agree with me that they felt like she was abusing it, that they was thinking about discharging her. They have discharged her before in the past, and then she came to me 2 or 3 days later and said, we give a bus pass to go to the doctor. Oh, I need a bus pass to pick up my prescription. I'm like, what prescription? She was like, my Adderall. I'm like, what?
So she went to another doctor?
No, she went back to the same doctor and they gave her another prescription. So I've been monitoring her. She's saying that the reason why her behavior was the way it was that day is because she didn't take her high blood pressure medication.
Withdrawal.
So I was like, I said, I have never, you know, ever heard that because you didn't take your high blood pressure medication that it'll make you ass. She was shaking, her eyes was going all over the
So
place.
she didn't take her Adderall?
No, not her Adderall. Her
No,
high
I'm
blood-
saying that she said her high blood pressure, but she probably had not taken her Adderall. She probably didn't have the Adderall.
So,
But just a mental freak out that you're not going to have it.
but she had a prescription, but I was just surprised that the doctor was writing her another prescription.
Even with the call.
Even with the call.
Well, unfortunately, the doctors are still in a place where they're trying to figure out, you know, what do we do or how do we wean people off of these medical medications that they have that they become addicted to, and then what can you really replace it with? So those are individuals who really need some additional individual therapy because, again, there's a psychological addiction to the medication that they're taking, and they don't think that they're going to be able to manage the pain if they're not on that medication. And so they need a little bit
So
more
she's
than
actually
just...
she's actually about to start to get some one-on-one counseling, and but when she did go to assessment.